The Middle East stands at a dangerous crossroads. After weeks of airstrikes, 2,500 American Marines might be used in the war, sparking fears of an imminent ground invasion. Tehran warns its forces are ready to set them on fire. Power grids in Tehran and Kharaj lie dark after strikes. Iran retaliated, hitting Israel's Beersheba industrial zone. Yemenis Houthis have now entered the fight, threatening Red Sea shipping and global trade. As Pakistan offers to host emergency talks, Egypt, Saudi Arabia and Turkey urge immediate de-escalation. But with Israeli expansion operations in Lebanon and both sides trading threats, the risk of a wider regional war grows by the hour. We bring you the latest developments. Let us continue our special coverage for the most recent updates concerning these global escalating crises. The brief silence has ended. Heavy explosions are rocking Tehran as the 5-day pause officially expires. Massive U.S. and Israeli airstrikes have returned, targeting Iranian strategic sites and Hezbollah positions across Lebanon. The fire is spreading rapidly from Yemen to Beirut. Houthi forces and regional proxies are joining the fight, turning the Middle East into a multi-front battlefield. This sudden escalation signals that the recent diplomatic efforts have officially failed. The region now faces a terrifying reality. With peace talks ignored, the drums of war have replaced dialogue, risking a total global energy crisis and regional collapse. President Donald Trump has authorized the major deployment of American Marines. This move to ground combat marks the terrifying expansion of the conflict, shifting from airstrikes to a direct planned invasion. This elite units aim to seize strategic oil routes and neutralize Iranian defenses. It also signals that Washington is digging in for a long-term fight, effectively killing all recent peace efforts. The United States' goal might be total elimination of the Revolutionary Guard. This explosive situation puts the entire world at risk. As the Strait of Hormuz remains paralyzed, the threat to global energy security has never been more urgent for the world. The danger is now imminent in multiple fronts. A full-scale ground war might begin threatening global energy and stability of every neighboring nation. The Houthis' entry into the war transforms this conflict into a regional firestorm. By targeting vital shipping lanes, they directly threaten global trade security. Yemen has become a central front in Tehran's strategy. This mobilization of the axis of resistance aims to overstretch American forces and create chaos across the Red Sea. For the Arab world, the stakes are now existential. As maritime routes face paralysis, the risk of a total regional collapse grows. Diplomacy is losing ground to high-stakes military escalation. President Trump has announced a historic breakthrough, claiming Iran is now undergoing a true regime change. Speaking from Air Force One, he stated the United States is weeks ahead of schedule in reshaping Middle East relations. Trump noted that after recent leadership losses, a new third group has emerged. He describes these officials as very reasonable, suggesting the old hostile guard has been replaced by more cooperative figures. This development signals a major diplomatic reset. It marks a potential end to decades of tension and a move toward an unexpected era of stability. Meanwhile, Egypt joins Pakistan, Turkey, and Qatar in Islamabad for an urgent peace summit. They are demanding an immediate ceasefire to stop the Middle East from exploding into total war. This four-way alliance is pushing to restart stalled negotiations. They warn that continued fighting will collapse global energy markets and destroy the safety of every nation in our region. Egypt is leading this diplomatic rescue mission for de-escalation between conflicting parties and an urgent pursuit to end the war and restore peace across the region. The world now waits to see if Washington and Tehran will finally choose peace. To provide more analysis, joining us from Washington is Mr. Ziad Sofi, national security expert, and from London, Ms. Diana Aslawi, a researcher on Middle East affairs. A very warm welcome to our very distinguished guests and this special coverage. And we start off with Mr. Ziad. With 2,500 Marines now deploying, has the United States officially abandoned the limited strike strategy for a full-scale ground invasion of Iran?
First of all, thank you for the invite. Greetings to you, to the Egyptian people, and to your guest. Technically speaking, no, 2,500 Marines are hardly, an indication of a strategy shift to a full-scale war. You can't occupy Iran with 2,500 Marines. I think it falls along the same line as President Trump has mentioned. The US has eliminated the hardcore people like the previous Murshid, Ayatollah al-Khamenei, and neutralized Mushtaba, and slowly is bringing more pragmatic people like Kalibaf and Pushikian to the forefront. Having Marines on the ground, 2,500, having special forces, SOCOM, having airborne gives the president options to open the Strait of Hormuz, maybe with the aid of UAE and Saudi, options to neutralize Karaj, to occupy it or to control it by firepower, option to have troops on the ground in the Kurdish area and other separatist area, option to extract people that have defected, options to extract nuclear weapons. It just gives the presidents more options.
Ms. Dania, Iran just hit Israel's industrial heart. Does this retaliation prove that Tehran's strategic patience is over and a direct war has begun?
Is this question for me or your other guest?
I meant Ms. Dania, Ms. Dania? Iran just hit Israel's industrial heart. Does this retaliation prove that Tehran's strategic patience is over and a direct war has begun? Okay, Mr. Ziad, until Ms. Dania is with us again, I'll ask you. Tehran warns they will set American troops on fire. Is the United States military truly prepared for the high casualty rate of urban warfare in Iranian cities?
Right. A couple comments here. First of all, nobody said that the U.S. is going to go on the ground, and combat urban warfare. Like I mentioned earlier, there are some strategic things they need troops for, like the islands, maybe supporting, from the sideline, separatist area, or maybe extract, uranium or extract some people. This assumes that also that the IRGC can still fight. IRGC has maybe 125,000 troops. It has been beaten seriously hard, and they're hiding underground. Most of the heavy lifting today is done by the Basij, which are kind of weekend warriors, and they benefit from the system. Um,
Okay, sir, in
so
this
we have
context, as you mentioned, the IRGC, do you think that the United States' goal might be total elimination of the Revolutionary Guard?
I think change of behavior, like the president has said today, they control everything, but from under their bunkers, hidden across Iran. The Tuman, or the national currency in Iran today, is close to 2 million, I think, per dollar on the black market. And so their ability to actually pay their troops is diminishing, by the day. So the US is probably shooting for limited presence, like in Afghanistan. US controlled Afghanistan, maybe a country, maybe half of the size or third of the size as Iran, with 25,000 troops, by controlling, high elevation and controlling strategic places like Bagram Air Force Base.
Ms. Dania, the Houthis have officially entered the war. What does this mean for the safety of global trade routes?
So essentially, this turns a regional war into a global economic threat. And the Houthis are part of Iran's long-standing strategy to shift the battlefield away from Iran itself and to essentially fight wars through its proxies. The attacks in the Red Sea has disrupted one of the world's most critical trade arteries. And essentially, this shows that Iran is not looking for dominance through the Houthis, just disruption to raise global costs and to increase this chokehold they're having on the global economy, which we can already see has affected the global prices already.
Mr. Ziad, what specific action from Tehran would trigger a total unrestricted ground war rather than these localized deployments, sir?
Yes, weaponizing their nuclear stock. It's already enriched over 60%. There is some traces of enrichment over 90%. Weaponizing it, continue to blockade. I think the US over the next week or two will open the Strait of Hormuz with the aid of the UAE special forces. Also, any major hit on like the oil in the region, major hit on desalination plant, major hit on uh, electricity plant. So Iran's strategy is death by 1,000 cut. So they hit a little bit, in UAE, like desalination plants. They hit a little bit electrical plants in Kuwait. So they like dabble it around. They don't like cause enough of a reaction, and of course targeting US citizens across the region.
Ms. Dania, is Hezbollah's activity in the north a mere distraction, or are we about to see the complete Gaza fiction of southern Lebanon?
To answer this question, we need to assess how does Hezbollah function. Hezbollah did not escalate during the prolonged Gaza bombardment. It did not respond decisively, even after major leadership losses, such as Nasrallah's death, as we saw. Instead, we see they reacted only after Khamenei's death, and this shows that escalation tends to align with Iranian strategic priorities, not purely Palestinian or Lebanese ones. So we can infer that their purpose is to defend Iran ultimately, and this undermines its narrative as a resistance and reinforces its role as a proxy. So this shows that this is part of protecting Iran's interest in the region. And if this escalation is selective and strategic, it's not necessarily guided by the ideology, which raises serious questions about whom Hezbollah is fighting for and for what purpose.
Okay, Ms. Dania, as Israel is pushing forward more into Lebanon at this point, how do you see the situation and how do you read what's going on now?
I see there is an irony here because Iran has paved the way.
You said irony?
irony. There's an irony here
Yes,
because Iran has paved the way for Israel to expand in the Middle East. Iran has paved the way to cause so much disruption and weakening of these nations because they are involved as proxies of Iran. Therefore, Israel is actually benefiting from Iran's actions in the Middle East. So everything that Iran's doing, such as guiding Hezbollah, funding them to fight their wars in against Israel, is making it easier for Israel to invade and achieve their goals within Lebanon.
Okay, Mr. Ziad, President Trump is famous for winning. How does his administration define success here? Is it regime change or simply destroying nuclear sites?
It's actually changing of behavior, and the president has just mentioned this, I think, to Channel 14, the Israeli channel, that by eliminating the more hardcore leaders, we are opening the way for more pragmatic leaders like Kalibaf and Pushikyan. Obviously, success would be defined as extracting the nuclear enriched uranium, thus the 2,500 Marines and SOCOM in the region and the airborne, or destroying the ballistic capabilities. A lot of reduction in Iran's capability with UAV and ballistic has already been achieved. Iran is able to today launch 14% of the total amount of missiles that it was able to launch on day one, and is able to launch around 24% of the UAVs that was able to launch on day one. Iran's ability to keep its proxies alive and fed has degraded significantly with the closure of the logistic tail coming from, if you want, from Syria, and also with the Iranian currency at its lowest, around 2 million per 2 million rial Irani per dollar. So that will put them in a very dire position. They need that money to keep the Basij happy, to keep the IRGC happy, to keep the people happy, to rebuild after, this war is over.
Mr. Ziad, do you think that Donald Trump, one of his objectives is the fragmentation of the regime at this point?
I don't think so, because fragmenting the regime, I think, would upset Pakistan, because Pakistan is really worried about an Iranian regime that is pro-India, pro-Israel. Then it has to deal, in its backyard with a hostile Iran, the way it's dealing today with a hostile Afghanistan. Similar also, Turkey wants to maintain the status quo because it doesn't want to deal with a separatist area, and to be determined what the Gulf countries' interest is. I think maybe UAE might be interested in exerting influence over the Arab of the littoral right across from the Hormuz Strait, like in Bandar Abbas and Bandar Khor, in that area. But the rest is not very clear what's the interest yet. But I think slowly the world is moving, in a opposition stance to what Iran is doing by holding the world hostage.
You're done, sir?
Yes.
Ms. Dania, with massive blackouts hitting the Iranian power grid, is the Iranian public turning against the government, or is the rally around the flag effect taking hold?
So the Iranian people haven't truly been supporting the regime even before this war started. To give you some context, when Khomeini, the original supreme leader, came into power after the revolution, they saw the Iraq-Iran war start. And what did Khomeini do in this time? He hung 30,000 political prisoners. And this showed the ruthlessness of him. And since then, people were a little bit indifferent about him. They really, really saw this evil nature of the regime. And at that time, people were able to connect the regime to the country. Now, after this very recent history that a lot of people are still suffering the remnants of, they disassociate the regime from the country of Iran. They are patriotic of Iran, but when they see their country being bombed, it's not Iran being bombed, it's the regime being bombed. And this is due to accumulation of things such as corruption, mismanagement of the country, and of course this the oppressive nature of the regime. So to say that they are rallying around the flag, it's not an accurate way to describe it if we are not considering the die-hard loyalists of the regime.
Okay, back again to Mr. Ziad. How deep is the coordination with Israel? Are the Marines acting as a shield for Israeli jets, or are they leading the charge?
Yeah, it's in military term, normally ground troops don't provide coverage for air support. It's the opposite. The Israeli jet or American jet provide air coverage for the U.S. Marines. The coordination is heavy. There is generals, U.S. generals sitting in the Israeli command centers, and also there is Israeli generals sitting in the U.S. command centers. I think here all what this will lead to, again, the Marines, is to give the president maximum option. And I agree with your other guest. The current support for the regime in Iran is around 23%, according like to Gaiman. I think I talked about it before, out of 76,000 people that responded. But the problem is the opposition is not unified and the government is cohesive up to this point right now by setting up a clientelism system specifically for the Besiege and IRGC, where they get priority acceptance to universities, priority government contract, they get some perks, they get low interest loan to buy apartments, they get dollars, at a lot lower rate. Instead of being 2 million in the black market, they might get it at 100,000 rate, giving them a huge advantage. So that's why they stick with the regime.
Okay, Ms.
Thank you.
Dania, can the four-way summit between Egypt, Turkey, Pakistan, and Qatar actually force a ceasefire, or has the window for diplomacy already slammed shut?
I think this it's an important discussion, but it's not decisive. These states act as mediators, but they're not necessarily enforcing any power. The real de-escalation depends on US-Iran back channel understandings, and diplomacy
Are
is
they mediators and negotiators, or only mediators, Ms. Dania?
It's hard to say because it depends who we're talking about, and it depends how good of a relationship they have with the parties. We see a breakdown a lot of the relationship. This is why I'm hesitant to call them negotiators. After seeing the attack on Amman, who was a major negotiator, Qatar as well, it's hard to say where they stand when in this conversation.
Okay, do you see any progress, or are you optimistic about any talks or negotiations, or being together the four parties to end this war?
I think it's optimistic because there is so much at stake, and that ultimately is the reason why there is so much discussion, why it is such a big issue, because all the parties, as the other guests mentioned, they all have a lot of interest in what happens, and a lot of people a lot of states will suffer if there is a regime change.
It puts the entire world at risk at this point now, what's going on.
Exactly. And we can see this in the Gulf, for example. They have huge interest in what's happening right now. Traditionally, they have avoided conflicts with Iran, despite their meddling, Iran's meddling in their countries, because their development and their country's economy depends heavily on stability. This is something Iran does not care about because they do not invest in their infrastructure. But countries like Saudi Arabia and UAE, they do. And for them, this is a huge loss. And we see in Qatar, their economy is heavily based on oil and gas. And this recent attack on the gas field is detrimental, not just physically, but also to the economy. So we can see with all these players outside of just the four parties, it's everyone has a stake in this.
Don't you see, Ms. Dania, that the Strait of Hormuz is a very strong card that Iran is playing with?
100%. Iran has Iran is really, really good at leveraging. They make up for what they lack in what they can manipulate and leverage through proxies and, for example, their power over the Strait of the Hormuz. And now you're seeing this in the disruption of trade routes in the Red Sea. So Iran is smart in that way, and they know, okay, we can't beat them 100% just by attacking, because of course the US and Israel are such huge military and industrial complexes, but they are just strategically understanding that they have to leverage and force people to get involved because it's the only way at this point.
Mr. Ziad, Washington is escalating while Pakistan calls for peace in Islamabad. Is the United States ignoring its regional partners to pursue a military-only solution?
Yes, I don't think Pakistan, I wouldn't consider Pakistan a U.S. regional partner. Pakistan keeps relationship with both, with the U.S., with China, with Iran, and also with Russia. So I think Pakistan is doing what is in its interest to do to prevent a vacuum behind it, in Iran that Israel and India can fill and put pressure on them. That adds to the pressure that is already on them from Afghanistan and from India. Turkey, on the other hand, is trying to fill the void that the tidal wave that Iran is retracting from the Middle East. So Turkey speaks on both sides of their mouth. They are probably the biggest trader of goods, like the port of Haifa and port of Antakya. So at the same time, they present themselves as if you want, pro-Palestinian, pro-resistance axis, but at the same time, they're benefiting from the closure of the Strait of Hormuz because of all the oil from Iraq is exiting via the Kurdish area all the way to Europe. And also, they don't want to see another independent Iranian state in the Kurdish area of Iran. Also, Egypt is benefiting from the status quo. I think it's in Egypt's interest to keep things at the status quo because it's peeling off some of the European customers.
Why is it in Egypt's interest, sir, to benefit from the status quo when it's affecting Egypt economically?
Not at all. Actually, Egypt is benefiting by reselling the natural gas of Israel, selling its own natural gas to Europe and its own oil. And so a lot of the Eastern European countries today, or in the past, they have relied on gas, natural gas, and oil from the Gulf, like from Kuwait, from Qatar, from UAE. So now Egypt basically has replaced them with those specific customers. And Iran basically is trying to replace them with Iraq, with the Asian customers.
Okay, sir. Is Pakistan and India also benefiting from what's taking place? Your words, of course.
Of course, every country.
So they want the Middle East to stay in war, or they want to stop this war?
Yes, look, India, of course, it sees an opening to surround, Pakistan and Iran. Pakistan, Iran allowed 20 oil carriers, to cross. So in a way, they kind of have replaced the Middle East oil by Iranian oil and by Iraqi oil. So each country's there are pros and cons, right? So it's not 100%. So don't take the comment about Egypt negatively. There are some pros, sometimes you benefit from other people's conflict. You replace them as a supplier. And there are some cons, of course, too, because
not
it affects
some cons,
the Egyptian...
sir. There are a lot of cons to our knowledge.
Yes, for example, for example,
if Egypt and Pakistan and Turkey are benefiting and they're the main negotiators, so this makes a conflict of interest at this point.
Yes, for example, the Egyptian expatriate in the Gulf are getting affected or any future aid, from the Gulf to Egypt that it relies heavily on will be affected. So there are some pros, there are some cons as well. And it's also Egypt, probably it's in its interest to align with Turkey and Pakistan to fill the void that the Iran retraction from the region has created.
Okay, back again to Ms. Dania. How are Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates protecting themselves from being caught in the crossfire between U.S. bases and Iranian missiles? And how do you read what Mr. Ziad just said?
So essentially, they are building on the relation. They keep maintaining their relationship, long-standing relationship they have with the U.S. This unilateral relationship of defense and arms. They're strengthening air defense, missile interception systems, and maintaining quiet de-escalation channels of Iran. Because, as I said before, they've always maintained this policy of trying not to get into direct conflict with Iran, even if others thought necessary, and they want to try and avoid to be seen as direct participants. They want to stay close to the US, but not close enough to become a target. So this is just a strategy of survival, and there are many that have can analyze that they already had the severed ties in Iran and the Middle East, the Gulf, because of what Iran has done through their proxies. But a lot of people can analyze that they will never recover even the small amount of good relations they had, since they've attacked them overwhelmingly, the Gulf countries compared to Israel.
Okay. Mr. Ziad, back again to you. With domestic opposition rising in the United States, how much time does the Pentagon actually have before political pressure forces a messy withdrawal?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I don't think it's the Pentagon that has time. It's the president, how much time he has. I think if we take his words literally, which is hard to do with President Trump because the way he negotiates, he tells you something and the opposite. I think he told us at the beginning it's 4 to 6 weeks. So there is a couple weeks if you take his words literally. If you take how much time, he has by the War Act in Congress, I think he has another 60 days. So I think it's 2 weeks, maybe a couple months. And there is a word on the street that it might drag into the fall in the US. Like the early election in Israel might get pushed from June now, maybe to the fall. And this might drag a little bit longer. If I have to guess, I think it's going to be between around 2 months plus. How much more, I don't know. It's going to be more than 2 weeks, definitely.
You mean, sir, the Israeli elections?
No, the U.S. actions in Iran. This war will probably take another couple months at least in Iran. And the war in Lebanon has not started yet. The war in Lebanon will take probably maybe 9 months, maybe more, until they
9 months, sir. This will put the entire world at risk at this point, this explosive situation.
Yes, for Iran, I think, like I said, 2 weeks to 2 months, potentially spilling into the fall. Okay. For Lebanon, it's a different story. That conflict has not started yet. Once Israel finishes the war on Iran, then it will focus on Hezbollah.
Okay, do you think that the United States and Iran and Israel can sustain this war to 9 months?
The US probably, yeah, of course. I mean, financially, of course. With Congress, he has at least a couple more months with the War Act. At least a couple months. They try to take his authority away of declaring war.
Okay, got your point, sir, because I have to wrap up now. Thank you very much for being with us. That was Mr. Ziad Safi, national security expert, and Ms. Dania Silawi, researcher on Middle East affairs. Thank you very much both for your special insights and your valuable discussion, informative knowledge, and of course, on top of all, your time. As explosions continue across Tehran and Beirut, the Middle East titters on the edge of total war. With Marines deployed, Houthi is engaged, and diplomacy struggling, the world watches anxiously. Will peace prevail, or will this fire consume an entire region? We remain committed to bringing you every development. We continue watching, we continue reporting. This is Qnews, your window through truth in uncertain times. Thank you for watching.